Hello everyone, and thank you for choosing to watch this pre-recorded version of one of our training webinars. My name's Dawn and I'm Training and Support Manager here at Shorthand. This session lasts around an hour and a half in total, and we'll run through Shorthand and what it's used for, look at some story examples, and we'll also run through the 8 different section types within Shorthand and how to use them. So firstly, I'll give a bit of an overview into Shorthand and what it's used for. So Shorthand is an online editor that you use to create beautiful and engaging stories for the web. And we call them stories. They are web pages, but these stories could be any number of different types of content. So it could be a landing page, maybe a microsite that's linking out to lots of different stories. It could be maybe sort of a marketing content hub that you're creating. It could be long form journalism reports that you're putting together, or maybe annual reports for a company. There's really so many different types of stories that you can create with Shorthand. You can even do internal communication as well. So once you've used the Shorthand editor to put your story together, you will publish it and share it with your audiences or your readers. And there are a couple of different ways to publish. So I'll just very briefly go over to our plans. I won't sort of spend too much time talking about these. There's lots of information on the site here that you can have a look through. And if you did want to go through that in any more detail, then please do reach out to us. But there are 3 plans to choose from. Prelude, which is quite cut back and doesn't have all of the functionality that Shorthand offers. Then we have a Prime plan, which gives you almost all of the features, except for it doesn't include a custom HTML section, and it also doesn't include any branding. So the top plan is Pro, and that's where you get all of the features in Shorthand, and you do get the ability to create your own branded theme as well, so you can have your own fonts and logos and so on. Now, all of these plans assume that you're going to publish to your own Shorthand servers rather than your own servers. So we would create a subdomain for you, and then you would publish to that, and then you can embed that into your site. Or we do have a number of add-ons as well, so such as the Shorthand X, which allows you to publish to your own servers in a number of different ways, such as via an S3 Amazon bucket, or maybe via SFTP. Going back to those different kinds of stories then, so we do have these 6 hero stories on our website. I would encourage you to have a look at all 6 of them. They're really good examples of how you can use Shorthand, and they're all quite different as well. So we've got a story by Refinery 29, that's a commercial story. We have Honda here, which is actually a whole kind of marketing content hub that they've put together using just Shorthand. So most people tend to use Shorthand as a kind of extension of their existing CMS at the moment, but we are seeing a growth in more people sort of just using Shorthand as a way to build whole sites. And then we have over here, we have Balancing the Books. This is would have traditionally been just a kind of a flat PDF that would have been sent out to audiences, but they decided to create a digital abridge, and they were very, very happy with the results of that. Then we have a story by Red Barna, that Save the Children, the Norway branch, and this is a really great campaign that they ran. And then at the end of here, we have 2 very traditional publishers, Stuff in New Zealand and then the BBC as well. If you want to have a look at more Shorthand stories, I would again recommend having a look at our Pinterest boards. So we do have a number of different boards. We have the Shorthand Stories one, which has over 1,000 pins on there, and it has lots of different types of Shorthand stories. If you wanted to drill down into maybe a particular story type or maybe a use of a particular feature, you can also do that as well. So you could have a look at sports stories or brands or charities and NGOs. If you can't find an example of a story that you are looking for, maybe you're thinking about doing something quite unique, something particular, you maybe haven't seen it before, do reach out to us. We really like having these conversations and hearing about what kinds of stories you're putting together, and we're also happy to further share them on our socials and so on as well. So do kind of keep that conversation going. So that concludes the intro. So I'm just going to hop over into my Shorthand account. So this is my Shorthand training account. And as you can see, I've got lots of stories listed here that I have created at different times that I can continue working on. Up here, we've got our notifications panel. So we do keep this updated pretty regularly with new feature announcements. Also, if we have any planned maintenance or anything like that, then this would be the place to find that. There's also a blog as well that we have, so we do keep this updated fairly regularly as well, with news about us as a company, but also lots of handy hints and tips on how to use shorthand and storytelling more generally. So I would also have a look at that. And if you sign up for our newsletter, then we always flag the latest article as well, so you can have a read of that. So on the left-hand side here, I have a team structure. So you do get the opportunity, if you want in shorthand, to just have one team where you have all of your work, or if you wanted to actually separate your work, maybe have different people in different teams. So for example, if you're a publisher, you might have a commercial team and an editorial team, then you can do that. And I've just got this team structure here. So I just have a demo team and a shorthand training team, and I can create a new team if I wish. I can also access support down here, but I'll go through that in a bit more detail when we're actually in the editor view. And then you can also access some settings regarding your account as well. So if you're the owner of an account and you need to manage members, or you need to look at your publishing settings and so on, then that's where you would do it from here. And what I really want to focus on today is actually creating a new story. So I click that, and then it will ask me which team I want to create that in. So I just select the right team, and then I get a choice here, whether or not I want to create a blank story or maybe use one of our templates. Now, we would always recommend starting from a blank story. We do have some planning documents in our support documents as well that you can have a look at. And in there is a visual storyboarding that you can use to put your stories together. So you can map it out on paper first before you actually put anything into shorthand. I would always recommend doing that. I think it's a really good practice to make sure you've got all of your objectives lined up really early and you're really clear on those. And also just marking down things like the publishing. Do you know how you're going to publish this story yet? Do you know how people are going to find that story? You can write down your promotion strategy. Are you going to actually embed the story on your website as well, on a home page, and the normal routes that people would find content on your website? So you can start with a template if you want. So I'll just show you one of these really quickly. And the reason these have been put together is that if you're sort of wanting to judge if shorthand is going to be useful for you, then you could come into here, you could delete the text that already exists, delete it, add in your own, and you can basically override all of the elements that are in here. And also if you scroll down as well, you can see sort of how this story has been put together. You can see the different kinds of sections that it uses as well, because it's just got this little tag up here. So it's a good opportunity just to see the kinds of things that you could create. So as I said, what I'll do today is just focus on that blank story. So this is the shorthand editor. This is where you're going to be putting all of your stories together. As I mentioned, it's an online editor, so it's used when you're logged into the internet on your own browser. It is designed to be used on desktops as well. So if I actually just take my page down to this size, you see I get this red banner that's just telling me that it's not going to work very well at this size, just because I haven't got enough room to edit the page and get a really clear indication of how everything's going to look. Everything saves as you go, so you'll note all the typing that we do when we put in words, everything saves as you go. But when you open up the media modals, which I'll do in a moment, you do have the opportunity to press save there, so you commit your media into shorthand and upload that successfully. And you start with a title section in shorthand, so that's usually the first section. It's the first section by default. And then you add sections as you go. So there are 8 sections in total. Text, text over media, background scrollmation, reveal, media, custom HTML, and the collection section. So I'll go through each of those one by one and just explain how you can use them and what kinds of things that you can use them for, as well as some best practice tips. And I just want to note this as well. So at the bottom, we have 1 out of 25 sections used here. Just a little note on that. So we do put that limit on everyone when they first join shorthand. We've done a lot of testing and we find that stories tend to perform better when they are 25 sections long. And that's both from an engagement point of view and a technical point of view as well.
However, we can raise that limit for you and it's at no extra cost. If you do want that limit raised, though, all we would say is we just would strongly recommend that you adhere to all of the media guidelines, which I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail very soon. And also that you're really thinking about every section that you're adding to your story. Also, think about using a collection section maybe, rather than, if it's going to be quite a long story and you have lots of, say, chapters to it that you want to explore, you might want to consider using a collection section so you can actually create a bit of a landing page for that content, and then you could have, you know, sort of mini stories about each of the chapters, and that tends to be really engaging for the audiences as well. So before I start building the story, I just want to show you what all of these icons relate to at the top here, just so you're super clear on everything. So firstly is themes. When you first sign up for Shorthand, you get two of these themes. So you get a Shorthand blue theme and you get a Shorthand basic theme. So everyone has access to these. And you can see, as I just changed these, it changes the color of the header here. It's giving me this blue overlay. It's changing the fonts as well. So this controls the look and feel of the page. Now, if you did opt for our Pro plan, what you would get is your own branded theme. And the way that works is you would send over all of the information that you need us to know. So maybe brand guidelines, you would tell us what fonts you use and provide details about the font servers, or send over the physical font files, supply your logo, and so on. And then what we would do is we would get our designer to put together that theme for you, design it, and then once it's ready, it would just be available in this drop down so that you can actually apply it to your stories. And if you are already working on a story, then you can actually apply that theme retrospectively as well. So worth noting that. Next up is the settings. So this is where all of the metadata for the story is going to live once it's published into a live environment. So you'll notice at the moment that the title and the description are coming immediately from this title section. So we would always recommend keeping the title the same as it is here, even though you can override it if you want to. That's effectively your H1, and you want to be keeping that the same. We do have a guidance on SEO within Shorthand as well that I would recommend having a read through. The description, on the other hand, this is really handy that you can change this, because what you might find is you're going to have your media in the background here. You might have either an image or a video, and the title and the subtitle against the backdrop of the image or the video are going to make a lot of sense. But you might find if when it's posted on social media or search results, that maybe that subtitle doesn't give enough information about the story. So what you really want to do with this description is provide a lot of information about the story, and tell the reader why they should be clicking on it in organic search, for example. What is the story about, and what are they going to see? Then you can add authors and keywords. These are optional. If you're publishing to your own servers, then you can put in where you're going to publish it. So you need to do that. You need to tell Shorthand where this story is going to be published. Whereas if you're publishing to a Shorthand subdomain that we've created for you, then that's taken care of. We know where it's being published, so you don't need to put that information in. Next up, you can add a publish date as well. This is quite handy if you're working maybe with colleagues on a story and you want everyone to know what the deadline is. And then you can also add analytics in this box as well. So a few notes on analytics. Obviously, it's Google Analytics that's mentioned in here, which you can just drop that in, and that's very easy. Also, we do have options if you're on the Pro plan to use our developer tools, so you can add analytics into there. But also, if you have that branded theme, you can actually put all of your analytics into the branded theme. And that means that you don't need to put it in on every story. It's going to be there for you. So that's also very handy. Next up, and living in the header, is the social sharing button. So you can either click in the social there, or you can click them here just to activate this. And there is a guide on using the sharing buttons effectively as well. So the sharing buttons are a great way of encouraging your audience to share your story with their audience for further exposure. So here you can have Facebook and Twitter, they come as standard, and then you can add an image for each. And then for Facebook, you can add a title, description, and an app ID, but that's optional because not all people use that. And then you can add share text with all relevant hashtags, a handle, and then also a short URL. So maybe something like bit.ly or tiny URL here, and then you can further track the analytics on that and how many times it's shared. You can also decide whether or not you want to have it on or off on mobile. Our preference is off. People tend to use their own sort of on the phone applications to share stories. Also, the headers are obviously a lot more restricted in size, so it's better to have less in the header there, but that's totally up to you. If you wanted to learn more about that, you can just click here and it opens up our support panel. Next up is the developer tools. So we have CSS and JavaScript. JavaScript is where you would be entering in any scripts for analytics if you decide to do it that way. And then CSS is the way that you would change the look and feel of the page. So further to the themes, you can override elements of the page on an ad hoc basis. One of the great things about Shorthand is the editor allows you to create these really engaging stories, and sort of part of our ethos is that you don't need to be a coder to use these. So while the developer tools are there, if you opt for a pro plan as a way of adding further customizations to your stories if you'd like to, a lot of people don't use that. It's really one of the great things about Shorthand that you don't need to know any coding to use it. So last but not least is the support. So this is hopefully where you'll find lots of information about how to use Shorthand, especially useful when you first get started. This is where you'll find information about all of the different section types and how to use them. It's also where you'll find things like the SEO guide that I mentioned. You can also read more about how to use Google Analytics in Shorthand. And again, you can have a look at those planning documents that I mentioned if you were interested in seeing those. If you can't find what you're looking for, however, you can click on this Help at Shorthand lifelink, and then this will send us an email so that we can help you. Just a note on support hours. So I tend to look after it in UK hours, but I do have colleagues in the US and Australia as well. So we're a small but globally distributed and growing team. But we do say that support is on a 24/5 basis. So while most time zones are covered, we don't operate on the weekends. And then also, if you are looking for extra support, there is a premium support add-on that you can have in your plans as well. So let's start editing the story then. So to edit the text, I can just type in here, highlight the text, delete it, and then I can add my title in. And you'll see it operates really in the same way as sort of most of the writing tools that you use. When you highlight it, you can see a number of options here. And then you can also change the side on the left-hand side. And then you can also change the alignment as well. And that's pretty much consistent all throughout Shorthand as well. The same again for here. And I can also add a hyperlink into Shorthand as well. I can hyperlink any piece of text within Shorthand. And if I do, what I want to do is just click open in new window. And then that way I'm not going to be directing readers away from the story too early on. The other thing that you'll note here is the colors. So we can activate this for you if you don't have a theme. But what you'll get is the standard colors that you can see in here. But again, if you have a theme within Shorthand, then you can add up to 12 colors for your fonts and your background as well to give you more flexibility there and use more of your guidelines of your palette. You also have a byline down here. You don't need to use that as a byline though. You might want to use it as maybe a date stamp, for example, or you may want to put a little directional prompt there. Or maybe you just want to leave it blank. And with the title and text over media section, if you do leave any of these blank, then when you see the preview, there won't be a mark to say that there should be text in there or anything. To edit the media, you just go to the left-hand side, and then you'll note that you can add in an image or a video. I'll start with a video and a couple of points on the video. So it's background video, and that means it will be looping, muted, and it will also autoplay as well. So you do get the opportunity to add in foreground video into Shorthand, and you'll find that in the media section and also in inline within text columns as well. So I'll just add in my video. So I've added my video in, and as you can see, there's a few things going on here. So I've actually got a warning down here that says large video file detected. So I am going to break some of the rules in training today, just to show you that Shorthand does give you a bit of help on letting you know if any of your media files are too large. So as well as making yourself familiar with the media guidelines, that will feature in the support documents for all of the different sections, and they can just be accessed via the guide here as well. You do get that extra helping hand. So on the image and video sizes then, so images do need to be 2560 pixels by 1440 pixels. And then portraits need to be 1080 by 1920. Also for the video, you'll see the dimensions are the same for mobile, but actually for video, they're slightly different. So it's 1920 by 1080 pixels there. With video, one of the most important things to think about is the length of the video from an engagement perspective, and also from a loading perspective as well. So, but as well as the duration and the file size of the video, you want to be thinking about both of those in parallel. And what we would recommend is 2 megabytes per 5 seconds of video. So what I would need to do for this video, while it's only 13 seconds long, it's very large, I would need to compress this video. So I'm just going to click Save Changes on there for a second, and then I'm just going to open up the support panel again and just draw your attention to this other resources document. There are a couple of image and video compression sites mentioned in here that you can use, and they will dramatically reduce the size of the video, but not reduce the quality of it at all. So next up, I've got my landscape view, I've got my portrait view as well. Shorthand takes an automatic crop of images and videos. However, for the video, if you did want to add in a specific portrait video, then you can do like so. And then down here, I've got the opportunity to add in a fallback image as well. So we really would suggest doing that. Don't leave it, because if you do, then you'll note that we have something in here already. So if you don't remove the yak, he will stay there on your stories. And the reason to have a fallback image is because it will show immediately before the video starts playing. That's really important, because if your readers have a slightly slow connection speed, or maybe they are going on the underground or a subway and they're actually losing signal, if the video for some reason can't play, then they're going to see that fallback image instead. That's also relevant for some older mobile phone devices as well that don't support autoplay video. So my video is loaded in now. So I haven't really done much this story, but I just want to show you how you can preview the story and get a sense of how it's going to look on different devices, and also when it's published. So we can just see I've got the header, the footer, and then I've got my title section that I've created here. So the preview link gives you a way to test the stories. It just uploads everything that's in that story up to this temporary link so that you can test it. You can also share this with clients and so forth. But it is designed not to be shared publicly in any shape or form. So if you did accidentally share it on social media or anything like that, then it is against our terms to do so. So just a note on that. So with every section, you also get section options. So what you can do is you can further customize each of the sections. And here you can see you can change it to light or dark. I've got the colors turned on as well, so I can also further change those. I also have an overlay here, so I can lighten or darken the image as well. And you'll also note that this is on the text over media section. And then I can change the height of this as well, so either to a half height or a third height there. And then you'll also see that you can add a text fade out as well. So I'll just pop that on, and then I'll add another section so I can start getting the movement of the page, and then I can show you that text fade out. So the text over media section is very, very similar to the title section. You get 3 text fields, and you edit all of the text in the same way. And when you click the media panel, you'll see this looks the same as well. You can add in an image or a video. I'll add an image in this time. So I've added in my image here, as you can see, a picture of the Statue of Liberty. And the landscape version is working really, really well. I like the way that that's framed. And I can see here it's within the approximate safe area guidelines, which is really important. And I'll show you why in a second. However, on tool screens, the automatic crop that Shorthand has taken for this isn't really working. It's to the center of the image. So what I do need to do is I need to set a focus point. So I'm just going to choose that like so, and that works really well. And then what I'm actually going to do as well is I am going to set the same focus point on the landscape, just again so I can further tell Shorthand how to crop this image. And actually what that's enabled then is the torch is further away from the approximate safe area guides, meaning that it's not going to be cropped on different screens. You can also add captions and alternative text, and then just save the changes here. So once that's uploaded, I'm just going to open up a preview, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the safe area guidelines, which if you wanted to read more about them after I've spoken to you about it today, then you can find more information in here as well, and also some overlays that you can download and put onto your images or your videos. So with the safe area guidelines, what they're telling you is how to make sure all of the information within your videos and images is going to be safe. Now, having these images at full screen is fantastic because they're really immersive and very engaging for the reader. However, there are lots of different devices out there and lots of different browser sizes. In fact, I could simply just move my browser to that size there. And as you can see, Shorthand is responsive, so it's changing the way that this image is framed within this viewport, but it's always maintaining that full screen. But what it does need to do, it means that it's not going to maintain the aspect ratio. So if you just look at the street lamps here over to the right-hand side, you'll see as we move down, actually those disappear. And the reason for that is because they're not in the safe area guidelines. They are outside of that area, meaning that they're going to get cropped. That's absolutely fine for background imagery like this. It's not going to affect the user's understanding of the story at all. But if you're using these sections, and this is relevant in the title section, the text over media section, the background, scrollmation, and reveal as well, because these are all full screen sections, it does mean that if you're using graphs and things like that, you need to think carefully about those approximate safe area guidelines. So you do get section options on this section as well. You'll note here you get the addition of visibility. So what this actually allows you to do is decide whether or not you want this to show on mobile, desktop, or all devices. And that's really handy because when you're working in Shorthand, you see the portrait view and the landscape view, which allows you to cater for all devices. But if you did want to further customize that, then you can do. And just to explain the reason why it's mobile only and desktop only and there's no mention of tablet in there, is we work with a 900 breakpoint, pixel breakpoint. So that means that anything larger than 900 will be treated as a desktop, and anything lower than 900 will be treated as a mobile. So there's just a reminder there about the 900 pixels. You also get the light and dark, the overlay, the height as well that we saw earlier, text fade, and then we also have another addition here of background position. Now, the reason that we can see this is because it's an image rather than a video. So if I just change this to a half height and then just click to come out, I'm actually going to add a text section again so I get the movement of the page here. So at the moment, I've added in the half height, and then what I've got is the background in a fixed position. So what's happening is the image is staying still and then the rest of the story is scrolling over that image. But if I go back into this and then change it to a scrolls position, what will happen is it will crop the image, but then the image will actually move with the story. So there's some really, really nice effects that you can create with that as well, and to present data, sort of educate readers. Maybe you could have sort of blueprints changing. You can maybe plot journeys on a map. There's so much you can do there with that. And just to give you a couple of examples, I'll go on to the craft here. We've got this introducing section options. And here we have a half height header. And then here we have a third height in a scrolls position. And then we have, again, a third height text over media section in a fixed position. And then this is one of the nice effects that I've talked about. So a lot of people have utilized this, especially car companies, to peer into the bonnet of a car, and also for a few data stories as well. So we've got a full height text over media section here, followed by a third height text over media section. And then we've got another full height text over media section there. So the first and the last are the same, and then you just have that third height in the middle there that allows you to kind of peer into the pie with a bit of X-ray vision. So that's the title and text over media section. Then I'll move on to the text section now. So the text section is where you can have a column of text that sits on the left, the middle, or the right-hand side. And this section will actually grow or shrink depending on how much text you have in that. So just to illustrate the point here, I'm just going to remove the majority of the text. I'm just going to make this a large header, say chapter 1, and then align it to the middle here. And then what I'm going to do is just add our next section, which is the background scrollmation. Now, sometimes with these visual stories, you find that you might have maybe less visuals than you would have liked to, or you may find that you want to kind of save visuals for a background scrollmation flipbook animation, for example, and you want to save the images for that, or you want to save them for a reveal. If that's the case, then using small text sections to introduce like the next section that follows, or maybe to actually use it as a way to break up the stories into chapters, can work really, really well. So just to show you that how that would work. But I can actually just take that out, change that back to paragraph text, and then I can copy all of my text in here that I had earlier. So you get 3 different types of headers. You can add pull quotes here as well, drop caps. You just need to click out of those to see that. Obviously, I haven't got much text in there, so I might want to add in some more text there if I was using a drop cap, just so it looks nicely styled. And then you also get bullet points as well. What I'm going to do is just add a bit more text to this, just so that you can see what it looks like when it's much longer as well. And in between every paragraph break, you get the opportunity to add in media or dividers in HTML. So I'm just creating a couple of these, and then what I'll do is just go through and show you some of the different options that you can add in here. So firstly, insert media. So you can add an image. Again, all of the guidelines about the sizes, you can just click here, and then that will open that up. You can add a caption, alternative text. You can also add a link to these images as well, so it can be a really nice way of linking out to maybe other pages, or maybe you might have a link back to your website using an image, or maybe a subscribe button.
You can also add in a video. So this is where I mentioned foreground video. This will be video that will have sound, but it will need to be clicked and played by the reader so that they can engage with it. As well as adding the video, you also need to add in a poster image as well. So the poster image will display before the reader clicks and plays the video. So that's really important as well. You might want to just add in the first still frame of the video here, or you might want to actually create an image for the video itself. You can also add in a caption there. You can add in a YouTube. To do that, you just need the link where the YouTube video appears, and then you can also add a SoundCloud for audio as well. So they're all the kind of the built-in options that you have. And I'll just save that YouTube video to show you there. Next up, you can add in a button. So click on it to edit it, and then you can add in a link here. So what I might do is just add in the link about our section options here. And then just click open a new window, update. And then you'll note that I can actually change some of this as well. So I can change the size of this, make it smaller or bigger. And I can change the color of it as well. So these are just all of the colors that you get in the Shorthand base theme. You can delete it very easily and also change the alignment as well if you went for a smaller button. Next up, you can add in a divider. So quite a nice way if you have a long text column, very long text section, you might want to just break it up when the subject changes. And again, you can edit this as well. So you can change the color of this, and you can also change the size of it as well. Next up, you can add a spacer. So this is just a very nice way of really dividing up the text as well. So kind of similar to that divider in principle, but it's just white space. So if you just wanted to add a bit of white space there from a design perspective, just to break up the text, then you can do, and then you can delete that very easily as well. So this is where you can add in a custom HTML block, and I'll go grab some code in a minute to add. But I'm just going to go back to this other resources page and show you that again, because the custom HTML block and the custom HTML sections are both great ways of adding in further interactivity or maybe third-party tools into your shorthand stories. So this is just a list of different third-party tools that we've seen being used to great effect or we actually use ourselves. So there are a number of options there that you can create interactive images, you can create timelines, you might want to just insert maybe Facebook or Twitter, maybe you want to make a data visualization with something like Tableau or Data Wrapper, quizzes and forms as well. There's a whole bunch of things there that you can use in your shorthand stories. And what I'll do is I'll just grab a Twitter embed here. So I'm just going to copy the code from here. And then just paste it into custom HTML there. So what I'll always see in the editor is the raw code itself. Then when I take it to preview, I will see the rendered tweet there. So you do get some section options on the text section as well. So the visibility, and then you can also just change the colors there. So either light or dark, or if you've got the custom color options activated, then you can use that as well. You'll also note that you get this advanced options as well. So this is where you can get the section ID of
of all the sections. I will talk about that in a little bit more detail at the end when we'll look at creating a story navigation. This is really handy though as well if you are looking to add further customizations using code to your stories. So if you know code, this will make sense to you very, very quickly. If you're not going to use code or haven't used code, then this will seem a bit alien at first. The next up is the background scrollmation section. This is where you can add a column of text that sits on the left, the middle, or the right-hand side, really depending on where the focal point of your image or images are that sit behind that text overlay. Because what happens, we have 3 images in this example. What happens is as we move through here, the images will change. And this section's great. It's a fantastic way of creating interactivity in the story, great way of creating flipbook animation or gallery type effects. A couple of notes about it though, you do need to think carefully about the effect that you're looking to create and also how the text or how the content that you have in this column is actually going to work in unison with the image or images that you have. So what you'll see is I've deleted the majority of the text out of here. So actually now when you try to scroll through, we're not seeing the images because there isn't enough content in here to give that kind of power of the scroll. Now there is one thing to think about here. You could actually use the spacer. So if you only wanted, maybe it's a quote, maybe you have a really nice quote from someone and you have a couple of images of them that you wanted to have in the background of that quote. If it was just one image, obviously you could use the text over media section and that would work a lot better. But if you had a couple, what you might want to consider is using a spacer here. And then what you'll see is because we've effectively added more content in here, I can now actually scroll through all of those images. I'll just add the text back in there. I'll show you a couple of examples of the background scrollmation in use. I think it's always great to see how other people have used these types of sections and also the different ways in which they can be used as well. So to start with, I'll show you this flipbook animation type effect. So this is a story by Great Ormond Street Hospital. We start with the title section and then we have a small text section before we go into the background scrollmation section. And we have a number of images here taken from some old video footage. And then what happens is as you scroll through the story, it gives the illusion that the people are walking through the hospital. And this is a really engaging experience because the interaction here is all being triggered by the reader. So it's not a GIF, it's not being done to them and the audience aren't just watching this happen. They're actually completely engaged because they're able to move this flipbook animation as quickly or as slowly as they want to. Another example of the background scrollmation section in use is this story by BBC, which is actually one of the ones that I showed you earlier on the homepage. So this uses it in 2 different ways. Firstly, we have this section where we have 2 images, and as we scroll through, it just quickly changes from one image to the other. And then here we have just one image that remains in the background as we scroll through the text. So just to give you an idea of the different ways you can use it. So before I put some images and create my own flipbook animation, I just want to show you the section options. So you can have the visibility here as well. You can change to dark or light, or you can use the colors if you have them activated. You can add a text fade in so that as you approach the page, the text fades in. That works much better, you'll see on preview. And then also in the section options, you get the option to add in a fading transition here. So either a slow or a quick fading transition. So this can be really useful if you are creating stories and background scrollmation sections where you have that gallery type effect, where maybe your images are very starkly different from one to the other. So actually by adding in this fading transition, it makes the change a lot gentler for the reader. However, if you're going to create a flipback animation, of course you don't want the transitions there, so I'm just going to remove that and then just scroll up here so I can access the edit media, and then I'm going to add in some images of my own. While they load, I'll just talk to you about the warning that you can see down the bottom here. So we have a performance alert. So it just says, for best reader experience, we recommend no more than 10 images per section. So within the background scrollmation section, we do recommend that you have no more than 10 images. So I have an option here. What I could do is just easily just delete the last 3 images so that that warning is removed. But if I'm wanting to create a particular effect where those last 3 images were very crucial, for this one it wasn't, so it's just a panning across Paris, and it works pretty well with the amount of text I have in there at the moment. But if you were creating something where those last 3 images were really integral, then we would always recommend sticking to those guidelines. But you can use your own intuition. If you are creating quite a small story, maybe it doesn't have any other heavy media in there, maybe no video, or if it has video and it's all coming from Vimeo or YouTube or something like that, then it's not hosted within the story itself, then you may find, and do test it across different devices just to make sure, but hopefully you'll find that those extra 3 images aren't going to cause too much trouble, and then you might want to consider leaving them in. But we would recommend testing across devices and just making sure that you're happy with the load time. And then of course, if you did notice any problems on the story, if any of the rules are broken within shorthand, any of those media guidelines, then that would always be the first port of call to fix that kind of stuff. So I'll just show you what I've done. I will show you first in the simulator. So the simulator is a great way of starting to get a sense of how it's going to look on different devices. So here we can see the background scrollmation on desktop and how that's going to work. And then we can also see how it's going to look on phone. So it's going to look a bit different on mobile phone. So what's going to happen is the image will come into display here, so the first image that you've added, and then the text will come over the top of those images. So in the background, the same thing is happening. Those images are changing, but of course the text is over the top of it, so it is truly background media here. This is absolutely fine for the effect that I've created here. It doesn't affect the reader's understanding of the story, but obviously I've made quite a nice effect there, and they won't be able to see that panning on mobile. So I do need to think about that, and I'll show you an idea in a second that you could maybe consider. Just before I do that, I do want to show you the media modal again and just remind you that, like the title and the text over media section, the background scrollmation also has the same thing here in terms of it being a full screen section. So we have the approximate safe area guidelines that sit around the outside, and then we also have that automatic crop that's taken for mobile as well. So this is working okay for me. I would just leave it as it is, but if I wanted to set the focus point maybe to like the Eiffel Tower or something like that, then I might want to consider doing that as well. Another thing that you can do is also add alternative text onto the images here, and you can do that across shorthand. And if you are interested in learning more about using alternative text in the context of accessibility, I would recommend having a read through this post on our blog. There's some really handy hints and tips there on how to make sure that your stories are accessible as possible. So moving on, I'd like to show you the scrollmation section now. So the scrollmation section is very, very similar to the background scrollmation section. It works in the same way, except that you have a column of text that sits on the left or the right hand side. And then on the opposing side, you have a column within which sits your image or images. Again, the same happens. We have 4 images in this example. And as we scroll through, the images will change. So another thing that you also note with the scrollmation sections is the column of text that you get is very, very similar to the text section. So once you've learned how to use a text section and you know all the options that are available to you, then it'll be really easy to work within these as well. So I'm just going to show you how this section works on mobile, because again, this section works a little bit differently because we don't have enough space basically to have the 2 columns on mobile phone. So what happens is you have your images on the top of the screen, and then at the bottom of the screen you have your text. So what happens is as you scroll through, the images change on the top there as you go through. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add in those images that I had in the background scrollmation section and see how it's going to work on in this section. So I've added in my images there, and then what I've got is that same sort of effect here, but on the in the scrollmation section instead. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go back to my background scrollmation section, and then I'm going to choose desktop only here, and then I'm going to go into my scrollmation section and then decide to have this on mobile only. So what this will allow me to do now is, if I just take this to the mobile phone view and show you, is on mobile I'll have the scrollmation section, and then on desktop I'll have the background scrollmation section. And this is certainly not to say that you'll always do this. You won't always have a background scrollmation on desktop or scrollmation on mobile. Obviously a lot of people have each section on desktop and mobile, but it's just hopefully an easy way to show you of how you can take advantage of the visibility feature there. So there we've got that on mobile, and then if we go to desktop, you'll see it reverts to the background scrollmation. One more thing about this section is every time you add a paragraph break, you'll also see one more option here. So you'll see insert scrollmation inline. So what this allows you to do is on mobile, rather than having the image at the top of the screen, you can actually have it featuring inline. So I'll just show you that as well. And this is handy for a number of reasons. One, you might not actually want to create an animation like I did on mobile there. And you actually might want to add in a couple of images that are pinned or inserted into the text at certain bits. Also, the size of the image is quite important, because on a mobile screen, we have that 16:9 ratio. So you have to have a landscape image for mobile when you have it on the top of the screen, because that's the space that is available to you. If you featured it inline instead, then you could afford to have a portrait image here, and it's just going to sit a lot nicer in that column and not be cropped in any way. So I'll just show you this here. So there we go. It's just inline there rather than being at the top of the screen. So the next section I want to show you is the reveal section, and this is where you can have a number of images and you can place a transition between them. So at the moment we've got 3 images in this example. We fade from the first to the second, and then we swipe up. So if we go into our media panel on this section, We can see we've got our 3 images in here. We can change the order of these as well if we want to. And then in between each of those images, we get the option to add the fading transition or no transition, down, up, left, or right. And you can also delete the images one by one if you wanted to as well. So I'll just show you another blog post. A little while ago, we ran a training session just on the reveal section, and it was a masterclass in the reveal. And this blog was written up as a way to demonstrate what was presented for anyone that couldn't make that. And it's the most comprehensive kind of write-up we have of the reveal section at the moment. So firstly, it goes into how to use the reveal section. And then we look at a number of different ways in which people have used it. So there's 10 different ways in total, but we look at galleries, delivering information, and then also comparing and contrasting here. So like this story, 7 Years of War by the National, where you're fading from images of what the area looked like before the war and then fading to how it looks now. So I'll send this around after so you can have a look in your own time, but hopefully you'll find this really useful. And I will show you another example of the reveal being used as well before I move on. So I'll show you that balancing the book story. So this has a really nice reveal in here where we look at some data. So I'm just going to scroll down here and firstly show you a chart that they created using the scrollmation section. So they animate this data as you move through. And then what I wanted to have a look here is this chart. So it stops here, and then this is image 1, and then we bring in image 2, so we bring in the data from the left to the right hand side, and then we bring in the disagree data. And that's just 3 images, so a really simple way to create interactive data visualization using just images. So I'll delete the images that are in here, and then I'll add in my own just to show you how you can do that yourself. So I've added in my images there. I'll just wait for those to load, and then I think I'll switch them around. So it goes from day to night rather than night to day. And then I'll choose my transition here. So I can go for no transition. I could go for a fade here. That looks quite nice. Or I could go for a down. So night is kind of falling on New York. So there you have it. And just one final thing to mention, the reveal does operate in the same way as the background scrollmation, title, text over media section. So we have that approximate safe area guidelines, and then we have the ability for the set focus there as well. So with that section, as you can see, it's great to create data visualization using it. However, I know you're probably thinking, well, how do you use that set focus there? Well, you wouldn't actually. What you would do is you would actually add in different images. So that's what they've done here. So same design, but they've just made it in a different orientation for mobile phones, but it works in the same way. So if I go back to our story, I'll show you how they did that. So what they did is they added in their landscape image, and then rather than setting the focus point, what they did is they uploaded a different image that had been cropped and designed especially for mobile. So the next section I want to show you is the media section. So the media section, you'll note, is not a full screen section. So it's got this border that sits around the outside of it here. So this is a section where you don't have to worry about the safe area guides. They are not relevant here because you have that border. And also because it's technically not a full screen section, so it's not designed to completely fill the viewport. So what you can add into here is firstly an image with a caption, alternative text, and a link. Video, again, foreground video where it's going to have sound, but your reader will need to click and play that video. And then finally, you can add in YouTube as well. I did a YouTube earlier, so I will just save an image here for you. What I'll do is I'll just upload an image. Next section is the custom HTML section. So this is very similar to the custom HTML block, except for this time it's going to sit at full screen. So our offices are based over in South Bank in the UK. So I'm just going to take a Google map embed from here and then add that into my story. So embed, and I'm just going to copy that HTML and then paste it into here. Again, raw code in the editor, but take it to preview and then you'll see the rendered code. Now, if you have ever used Google Maps and inserted it into a web page, then you'll probably know that this isn't going to work the way we would like it to when you first add it in. So almost there. There we go. So the reason this is happening is because Google, while fantastic and easily embeddable, it doesn't give you responsive code. So what we need to do is we need to change the height and the width of this to 100% so that it's going to 100% fill the space that it's been pasted into. So I'm not a proficient coder, so I really like this tool. Our devs actually found this a couple of years back, but you can use it to insert YouTube code, Vimeo, Dailymotion, Google Maps, Getty Images, and this is the real key one, any generic iframe. So most of those third-party tools that are referenced in our other resources will give you an iframe that you put into your pages for you to use their interactives. So that will work. So when all you do is you put in the code here, then click embed, and then you can take the code here. So if you're interested in knowing what it's doing, it's just changed the width and the height here to 100%, but you also have this width and height down here as well, which is 600 and 450, and then you have frame board and a lot of other stuff going on. So if you're not really proficient in coding, then a tool like that is so easy to use and just really gives you that help in hand here to make sure that your stories are going to look fantastic. So I'll just scroll down to my map now. And there we can see it's looking much better. It completely fills the screen, totally works. You can zoom in and zoom out. It's a fully working Google map. So the final section that I want to show you is the collection section. And before I build one of these, I want to just talk you through what it is and what it's used for at first. So I'm just going to add it in there so it's ready for me to go. So the collection section is a way of linking to stories or web pages from your existing stories. If I just go over to our blog here, the craft, our blog, is actually built using a collection section. So this is a shorthand story, and this is a half height title section here. And then as soon as this white point starts here, and we've got latest stories, this is a collection section, and then it ends it ends here, where we go into our call to action at the bottom. So as you can see, we've got a number of stories here that we want to link out to. And what it does for us is it enables us to create a sitemap for
for the craft. Honda have done something very similar. They created the engine room using the collection section functionality as well. So this is also a collection section, styled slightly differently, more of a traditional styling. They've got their categories here, and then each of the collection sections goes into another product page. So we've got a title, an image. You can also have a description on these as well, and most importantly, have a link attached to them so it can take you elsewhere. And what Honda also do is at the bottom of every story, they also have a collection section at the bottom, and this means that they are really thinking about what they want their users to do next. So once you've read the article that you're on, however you got there, whether you got there from the home page, organic search, or social, they are giving you a set of articles that they want you to read at the end of that one. So it's a great way of thinking about that user journey and getting them to spend more time on your site reading your content. So the way that you create these is you actually go out into the dashboard, and then you need to click New Collection. And then I need to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it Training Example, and then today's date. And just to prove that this doesn't have to be another shorthand story that you're linking to. So let's say, for example, that you've created your annual report in shorthand, and it's the first annual report that you've done in shorthand. And you have other online annual reports, but they're going to be on your existing CMS. That doesn't matter. You could create your new annual report in shorthand, and then what you can do is link to those, because all the URLs have to be, it is a URL. So for example, I'm just putting in images here of London, and then I'm adding in a Google Maps URL so that you can link out to that. So I'll do this again. So there, I've added 3 items there: London, Sydney, Tokyo. I've left the description or the subtitle blank on each of them as well, because I don't need one there, but you can add a subtitle in there. And then my URLs are, of course, just Google links that I want the reader to link out to. And by default, all of these are going to open in new window as well, so they're not going to take the reader completely away from the story. If you have a theme, a shorthand theme, you have a branded theme, then you can actually change that to be open in same window if you wanted to, but the default is to open in new window. So now I've created that collection, I just need to go into here, and then I need to choose that collection section and then add it into my story. So I've got my other locations there, and then my 3 items that I've added. You see, I can change the visibility on this. I can also change this to dark or light, or I can add the custom colors if I have them activated as well, but I'll just keep that as dark for now. And then there you have it. That's my collection section at the bottom there. So a couple of other little bits in shorthand. So you can add a site navigation. So you just need to click these little buttons here. So you don't need to do them all in order. So I could just do a couple here. So I could, for example, just do, this is my text section. I could do my title section, or maybe I might call this something like home.
I'm just effectively naming these what they are. So reveal, custom HTML section. And there you go, I've added in those there. So if I just take this to preview as well, just to show you in a bit more detail. So it's really useful because it gives your reader the opportunity to move around the story to different chapters that they may want to see at certain points. Also, if you just watch the link up here, as I move around, this changes, the end of it changes. And what that means is I can create deep links or anchor points, however you phrase that, is your preference, into those particular parts of the stories. So that means that when it comes to promoting the story, I don't necessarily have to share the whole story each time. What I can do is share particular parts of it. So that can be quite good if you have a particular part that you want to promote in maybe a newsletter, or maybe just through social, or maybe it's a story where you have chapters and you're adding chapters to it as you go. You might start with a couple of chapters and then the story builds maybe. A couple of other little things. You can copy sections like so, and that's really useful if you wanted to create a complete replica of a section that you've already created. To give you an example where that might be useful, you might map out your story like I suggested on paper, and you may know that your story is going to have 5 chapters, and you may know that you want to have a text over media section for all those 5 chapters. So you might make the text over media section and then sort of make the first one, format the text in the way that you want it, the size, the color, and so on, and then you can actually just copy that section out so that you don't need to create it from scratch each time. And then you can very easily just change all of the media in there and anything that you do need to change. It's really easy to delete a section. You just do that like so, and you do just get a warning before you do that. You can also move around sections as well, and you can add sections at any part of the story. So when you're ready to publish your story, if you've signed up for a plan, you will see publish here. And the way that you publish will really depend on what plan you've opted for. So whether or not you've gone for one of our plans where you publish to Shorthand servers, or whether or not you're publishing to your own servers. So here on this training account, I've got a subdomain set up. So I just set up training.shorthandstories.com. This could be your domain, so you could do something very similar to this. You could just have yourcompany.shorthandstories.com, or you might want to mask this. You might want to have a custom subdomain, and maybe you have something like stories or features.yourcompany.com, so that it looks and feels like it's coming from your website when really it's actually on a Shorthand server. So for this option, all I would need to do is just type in my story name and then publish to that URL, and it would be live and I could share it, and it's super quick. It will just prepare the story media and then that will upload there. Now, if I wanted to publish to my own servers, again, very easy. And by the way, this is just telling me I haven't put the URL in there. If I was to use one of these options, I would need to tell Shorthand where I'm publishing to. So firstly, prepare for publishing. This relates to our plugins that we have. So we have 2 of those. We have one for WordPress and one for Drupal. So if you were going to use one of these, you would need to configure the plugin on your CMS. And then once you've got that all set up, you can then link it through into Shorthand so that when you prepare your story, you can prepare it to be published. You click that. This isn't connected anywhere at the moment, but if it was, then this will be ready to push to a CMS, and then I would publish through my CMS. You can also use a download story as a zip option. That means you download a zip file containing all of the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all of the media files, and then you physically would upload that onto your own servers. Now, if you are publishing or want to publish to your own service and use Amazon Web Services, or you want to actually purchase Amazon Web Services and maybe your own S3 bucket, which is relatively inexpensive, then you could set up your publishing to S3. And then because we use S3 ourselves, then the publishing flow would be very similar to this. So you would just create your own subdomain or domain that you wanted to publish to, the bucket that the URL is linked to, and then you would just publish in this same way. And as we can see, it's really super quick. This story is already published. Now, one thing to note, once you've already published a story, you might want to go back in and make a change on that story. Of course you can. It's super easy to do that. I'll just put a full stop here as one change. The only thing that you will need to do is you will need to republish that story. Because so as we can see, I've added in a dot there and it's not here. But if I go to preview, because the preview is totally live, it's a total live representation of what's in the editor at that time, the full stop is there. So all I need to do though is I need to click republish and I need to push that story live again with that full stop. And then if I click on this, give it a little update. And then it's there. And as you can see, it didn't take very long at all. I did have to refresh it a couple of times just to make that appear, but that was super, super quick and easy. And if you want to unpublish something, because you do or have to for some reason, maybe it's only needing to be live for a certain amount of time, you can very easily just unpublish there, like so. So publishing is very easy. You just need to decide which route you're going to choose. Now, a couple of other little bits to show you. So you can add collaborators to your story. So I can add my colleague Daniel to this story, for example, and this makes him an editor so that he can make changes to this story. If I wanted to make him a viewer, then I can just press the I there, and that reduces his permissions on the story so he can just see the preview link in his dashboard and he can't see anything else. Or if he's an editor, then he can make changes on that story, but we can't edit it at the same time. Only one person can edit a story at any time. I can very easily remove him as well. And I can also invite someone new who already doesn't, someone who doesn't already have a Shorthand login into the story to collaborate with me. If I go back into the dashboard, you'll also see that you can access the collaboration tools from here as well. So again, they look exactly the same. I can add Daniel, make him a viewer or an editor. I can also switch ownership of the story to him as well. But the only reason I would really want to do that is if maybe I was leaving an organization or I was no longer working on a project. You can also create a complete copy of a story. So what this means is that you can copy the story like that, and then you get a complete replica of that story. This is super handy if you're creating a story and you want to maybe play around with some different options, but you don't want to lose what you've already got. So you could create the first draft, and then maybe you could call it that. So you can add a note saying first draft. And then you could have this one as your final if you decide to go with that one, for example. Or you can use the copy function if you're putting stories out in multiple languages. That's really handy. A lot of people do that. So they would create the first one in the first language, and then they would copy that story, use their own translation services to translate that story into the other language, and then they would publish that. And one other thing that can be useful for is creating templates, your own templates. So if you found that this story actually really, really worked very well for you, you really like the format of it, then you might actually change your note to monthly newsletter template or something like that. And then you could make other people a collaborator on that, and then maybe they could copy out from that template as well. And then that way you're kind of starting with a flow that you already like.
So that concludes everything that we tend to run through in this full training session on Shorthand. Thank you very much for listening to the pre-recorded version of the webinar. I really hope you found it useful. If you do have any questions at all, then please do reach out to us at help@shorthand.com. Thanks very much and have a lovely day.